Chapter 98. Rimuru-san. Chloe landed gracefully in the forest of Jura, just as Rimuru finished a conversation with the Lizardman chief. The Lizardman tribe had recently migrated to the marshes in Rimuru's territory. Chloe. Rimuru tilted his head in curiosity as he noticed her appearance. He waved a hand to dismiss the Lizardman chief, who bowed respectfully before leaving. Do you need something? Rimuru raised an eyebrow, eyeing her attire. Chloe wore a dress that blended perfectly with the forest's natural surroundings. If someone didn't know better, they might think she was a dryad. Let's go on a date, she exclaimed, hooking her arm through his. The two of them traveled to Ingrassia, which had already begun to take shape at this point in time. Unlike the bustling, well-known Ingrassia of the future, it was still a humble nation, relying on trade and crops to sustain itself. However, due to its strategic location, surrounded by other nations, it had become a melting pot of cultures and commerce. Chloe and Rimuru dined at the most extravagant restaurant in the capital. Unfortunately, the food was still far from what it would be in the distant future, 100 years away from reaching its peak. Rimuru-san is being picky. This is still good, Chloe pouted, taking another bite of her meal. She swallowed and glanced at Rimuru, who had dressed more casually than usual. Tilda Rimuru-san looks so cool, no matter what he wears, she giggled softly to herself. Chloe is cute in that dress too, Rimuru replied, taking a sip of his wine. It gives off a perfect mix of innocence and maturity. Chloe choked slightly, caught off guard by the sudden compliment. Her face turned a deep shade of crimson, and she quickly looked away, avoiding his gaze. Why did you want a date all of a sudden, anyway? Rimuru placed his glass down and tilted his head, his curiosity piqued. Normally, we plan these things in advance. But this one seems pretty spontaneous. Chloe regained her composure and faced him with a serious expression. Well, it's almost time for Brother Leon and me to be summoned as children. Since I assimilated with my substitute self, I can feel that I'm about to be pulled out of this time frame. She took a light sip of her drink before continuing. In about a week or so, I'll be gone for 200 years. I just want to savor my time with you. She smiled warmly at him, locking eyes. Besides, this isn't sudden. I've had everything planned out, our week-long date. Wait, a week-long date? Rimuru blinked in confusion. Normally, dates didn't last a whole week. At least, his experience with them hadn't lasted more than a day or so. With a smug grin, Chloe puffed out her chest. Yes, a whole week. I even got Velgrin-san and Luminos-san's permission for it. Over the course of the week, they traveled to different nations, sampling all sorts of dishes and visiting famous attractions. On the rare occasion, they had to fight off humans or monsters who tried to ruin their date. Then, this is the last place, Rimuru-san, Chloe, still holding his arm, led him toward the capital of the Holy Empire. We're going home. Rimuru tilted his head as he realized they were heading toward Luminos's place. That was unexpected, I thought. As they opened the gates of the throne room, they found Luminos standing at the far end with a smirk on her face. Hinata was beside her, wearing a calm, composed expression. Why are you two dressed up so formally? Rimuru asked, raising an eyebrow. Chloe, who had pulled him along, didn't hesitate. What are you doing, Rimuru-san? Let's go. With a bright smile, Chloe, now wearing a white dress and a veil covering her face, walked forward, flowers in hand. Rimuru, still processing what was happening, finally smiled. Realizing the situation, I see. He quickly changed into formal attire as well, a black suit. Together, Rimuru and Chloe walked toward Luminos and Hinata. Chloe wanted a formal wedding, Luminos teased, watching as Chloe quickly averted her gaze, a hint of embarrassment creeping onto her face. Luminos began the ceremony. I don't know how things are done in your world, but let's keep it simple. Rimuru, do you take Chloe Aubert as your wife? Will you stay by her side, care for her, make love to her, and make sure she screams your name in B? Ah, Luminos-san. Chloe's face turned bright red, and she squeaked in embarrassment. I'm just joking, Luminos grinned mischievously, enjoying Chloe's reaction. It's your fault for not getting this done earlier, before the wedding. Hinata sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. She cleared her throat to get their attention back on track. Do you, Rimuru? Rimuru chuckled. Yes, I promised to stay by her side, and all the other things, he said, with a wink at Chloe. She jolted in surprise at his words. Do you, Chloe Aubert, take Rimuru as your husband? Will you stay by his side, care for him, and... Yes, I do, Chloe quickly interrupted, glaring playfully at Luminos. I swear to be one of Rimuru-san's wives. Luminos clapped her hands, her smile wide. Then, without complicating things further, as the goddess Luminos, I now declare you two husband and wife. You may pounce on Rimuru. Luminos-san. Chloe's face was nearly glowing from embarrassment. Hinata, clearly fed up with Luminos's teasing, grabbed her by the arm and pulled her away. Let's go. You two can finish here on your own. The door closed behind them, leaving Rimuru and Chloe alone. Rimuru grabbed Chloe's hand and scooped her up in a bridal carry. Shall we? Chloe, blushing furiously, removed her veil and leaned in to kiss him. She nodded shyly as they made their way to a room prepared for them. Once inside, she locked the door and set up several barriers to ensure privacy. Leon Cromwell. After his transportation to this world as a child alongside his sister who wasn't biologically related to him, Leon began his journey alone when his sister mysteriously disappeared right before his eyes. Determined to find her, he delved into the study of magic and summoning rituals, the very phenomenon that had brought them here. As the years passed, Leon grew stronger, eventually earning the title of hero after receiving the blessing of the Spirit Queen, Ramurus. He traveled to the sorceress dynasty of Sarian, searching for ancient texts that might help him in his quest. There, he met Sylvia, a high elf who turned out to be the mother of Sarian's empress. Leon-kun, how's your research going? Almesia, Sylvia's daughter, casually entered the room, her voice light, but with a hint of curiosity. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him work. Go away, Leon answered curtly, not bothering to look up from his work. His tone was sharp, his brow furrowed in concentration as his fingers delicately traced the lines of the magic circle for the summoning ritual, the soft glow of magic illuminating his focused face. Almesia huffed dramatically, plopping down in a nearby chair with a loud thud. She kicked her legs up onto the table and smirked as she crossed her arms. So, it's not going well, huh? Her voice was teasing as she leaned back, resting her head against the chair's backrest and watching him carefully. Leon didn't even glance in her direction, his eyes still locked on the intricate magic circle. He sighed heavily, as if the very act of speaking drained him. I don't know if it will work for a specific person, but here. She tossed a scroll toward him with one hand, the scroll flipped through the air gracefully, and he caught it. With his hand Leon caught a glimpse of the scroll in his peripheral vision and immediately opened it, his expression turning more serious. Rimuru helped me make this. It adjusts the age range for summoning. You said your sister was a child, right? This should help. She leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees as she watched Leon, waiting for his reaction. His eyes skimmed the magical symbols with precision. This is just an incomplete formula, he muttered under his breath, his frown deepening as he examined the magic circle on the parchment. Almesia rolled her eyes exaggeratedly, slumping back in her chair. Obviously, that's on purpose, you dense hero. She waved a hand dismissively, her fingers snapping a little as if mocking him. We found out that this incomplete formula causes the summoning to target children specifically. Unfortunately, you're still bound by the gap between summonings, every 33 years. Leon narrowed his eyes slightly but didn't look up from the scroll. He just gave a nonchalant shrug, his fingers still absently drawing along the circle's edges. That's fine, he said, his voice calm, even a bit distant. If it raises the chances, it's good enough. Almesia sighed, her head tilting slightly to the side as she studied him with a mix of disbelief and amusement. See, this is why you don't have many fans, even though you're a hero. She pouted, her hand resting on her hip. Why don't you just say what you really think? Instead of keeping everything to yourself, just say, Almesia-chan, thank you for the scroll. Leon didn't budge, his gaze still fixed on the scroll. His fingers gently tapped the edge of the paper. If you did, I'd ask Rimuru to help out more. The statement caused him to halt for a second as his eyes twitched by her words. Almesia grinned mischievously, remembering the countless times Rimuru had swooped in to help with her own chaotic plans. She leaned forward, her voice a playful mutter. I don't think you'd mind that, she teased. He's always so helpful, after all. She raised an eyebrow at him, clearly enjoying getting under his skin. I don't like him, Leon said bluntly, cutting her off before she could say more. His expression was impassive, though there was a slight tightening in his jaw as if he were bracing himself for what was coming. Almesia tilted her head to the side, genuinely confused. Why, he's fun to hang out with. She leaned in a little, her face brightening as she recalled their antics. We even pull pranks on the economy and governments of the kingdoms in the dynasty. She smiled at the memory, her eyes sparkling with excitement. To her, Rimuru was like a partner in crime, someone who made the dullest days an adventure. That's exactly the reason why, Leon said, rubbing his temple as if trying to ward off the headache that was forming. He recalled the chaos that Rimuru and Elmesia had caused together, too much fun, and too many consequences. The door suddenly slammed open with a dramatic bang. Yo, came here to hang out. Rimuji. Elmesia waved both arms in the air, her face lighting up at the sight of Rimuru. She stood up from her chair, practically bouncing on her feet. Rimuru strode into the room like he owned it, breaking through the magic barrier and the locked door with effortless ease, his wide grin never leaving his face. Glad you could come. Rimuru gave her a quick high five, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Leon, on the other hand, just closed his eyes briefly, exhaling in a long, resigned sigh. He already knew what kind of day this was going to be. Elmesia puffed out her chest, her voice full of pride. Of course, I'm your favorite niece, after all, she said, grinning smugly at Leon. Rimuru chuckled, tousling her hair playfully. I don't know about that. He ruffled her hair more, causing her to pout, her arms crossed over her chest in mock indignation. Milam is still higher on my list. Elmesia huffed, sticking her lower lip out even further. She doesn't count, she's more like a daughter anyway, after you adopted her. Leon silently gathered his things, moving toward the door with quiet resignation. He placed his belongings into his bag one by one, his movements slow and deliberate. I'm already tired, he muttered, not bothering to turn around. He could hear the two of them still chatting and laughing behind him, oblivious to his exhaustion. Just as he reached the door, two hands suddenly landed heavily on his shoulders. The pressure caused him to freeze for a moment before he sighed deeply. Now, Leon-kun, Rimuru said in a teasing tone, his voice full of mock seriousness. We need to have a chat about your personality. Yeah, it's for your own good, Elmesia added, her voice dripping with mischief as she leaned in close, her smile wide and almost too innocent. She was clearly enjoying the situation far more than Leon. Years had passed since then. Due to his relentless research, not only on magic but also the darker, more forbidden aspects of it, Leon had transformed from a hero into something far more unsettling, a demonoid. He rarely ventured out anymore, and the once legendary blonde hero had become little more than a distant memory, seen only a few times in passing. After assessing the summoning ritual given to him and considering the children's instability, stemming from their failure to gain a unique skill upon passing through, Leon reluctantly decided to take them in. Under Rimuru's advice, he brought them to Ramirez, who was more than happy to help the children survive. Leon-chan fell from grace. Idiot. Did you copy me? Idiot. To copy this lady Ramirez here, a yellow-haired pixie mocked as she flew around Leon, who brought a new batch of children to her labyrinth. Gritting his teeth, Leon grabbed the annoying fairy out of the air. Ah! Ramirez grunted, her tiny wings fluttering desperately as she struggled to break free from Leon's grip. She kicked her legs in the air, but Leon held her firmly, unfazed by her efforts. Pulling at Leon's clothes with a tiny hand, one of the children, a boy with silver hair, looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. Leon-sama, who is that fairy? He asked, his voice filled with innocent intrigue as he pointed at the struggling Ramirez. Leon glanced down at Ramirez, his expression neutral as he finally released her. For what it's worth, she's someone who can help you all, he said flatly, his voice devoid of emotion as he turned his attention back to the group. Ramirez, gasping for breath, her chest heaving as she glared at Leon with fiery eyes. I'm alive, she sputtered, still trying to catch her breath. What do you mean, for what it's worth? I'm the Spirit Queen, you know, Spirit Queen. Her tiny hands balled into fists, her face flushed with indignation. Leon rolled his eyes slightly, his expression unimpressed. So she says, he muttered under his breath, barely acknowledging her. He gave a brief wave of his hand toward Alrose, who stood quietly by. Go, Alrose. As Ramirez led the way, Alrose stepped forward, taking position at the center. She waited, poised, for the spirits to come. Over time, with countless summoning rituals across the globe, Leon had built a powerful force of elemental Mahjins, beings who, under his careful tutelage, had grown considerably in strength. More than a century had passed since then. In a dimly lit room, Leon began his summoning again. After several attempts, his patience was rewarded. He managed to complete the ritual with greater precision this time, summoning a figure that materialized, small, delicate, and no more than the size of a little girl. As the summoning finished, Leon took a long breath, seeing another failure. In his gaze was a small child with burnt marks on her body. He planned to call Maddle to care for the child. Another failure, he muttered, already planning on what to modify with the magic circle. Help me. The child's voice was trembling with fear as she struggled to raise her burnt body. Leon turned to face her, frowning slightly as he sensed the chaos in her energy. You have an affinity with fire. Ifrit, I offer her body to you. A swirl of flames materialized into Ifrit, the superior fire spirit. Without hesitation, the spirit entered the child, and she gasped as the power surged through her. As the energy settled, the child stood up, her body still trembling but more focused. She looked at Leon. Shizu, Leon nodded, his gaze steady. Shizu, Then from now on, you are Shizu. He turned to leave the room. Maddle, care for her. Yes, Leon-sama. A woman in white armor entered the room, swiftly lifting Shizu, who collapsed to the floor. Maddle cradled her gently, preparing to carry her out. You just left her like that. Rimuru scowled, sighing in his seat as he spoke with Leon. It had been months since the child Shizu had been taken in by Leon, and Rimuru had, coincidentally, chosen now to visit. Maddle and the other knights are taking care of her, Leon replied casually, grabbing his drink and taking a sip, deliberately ignoring Rimuru's accusing glare. First impression, idiot, what do you think the child will think of you? Rimuru leaned back in his seat, one hand covering his face in exasperation. You look like a villain who doesn't care enough to help a child. Leon set his drink down, meeting Rimuru's gaze with a flat expression. I am the reason the children even came to this world. I am a villain. That's not my point. Rimuru stood up and gestured for Leon to follow him. As they walked through the castle, Rimuru spotted Shizu and another girl chatting outside, a small monster cradled in the girl's arms. A wind fox, Rimuru muttered under his breath. As the two girls continued their conversation and entered the building, they soon spotted Leon and Rimuru on the second floor. Oh, greetings, Leon-sama, the other girl, named Pirino, said, slightly flustered. She was still holding the small monster in her arms. To both girls' surprise, the wind fox suddenly began to growl at Leon, its fur bristling as it fixed its sharp eyes on him. Pizu, what's wrong? It's okay, it's okay. Pirino muttered nervously, trying to calm the creature. She gently adjusted her hold on the wind fox, clearly worried for its reaction. Calm down now, Shizu. She glanced at Shizu, who was standing nearby. Before she realized it, Shizu faced her with glowing red eyes. Enemy. Flames started to appear behind Shizu. Pirino, taking a step back, noticed the magic circle below her. Okay, that's enough now. Rimuru snapped his fingers to dispel the magic and stood between the two girls. Ifrit, you better stand down before I end you. The glow in Shizu's eyes faded, and she slumped to the ground, breathing heavily, just like Pirino, who had collapsed in fear. What happened here? Alrose, who had heard the commotion, quickly arrived on the scene. Rimuru immediately placed Pirino and the wind fox in her care. Lifting the still shaken Shizu in his arms, he pointed at Leon to a room. We're going to have a long talk about speaking up again. He glared as he went inside the room. Leon sighed and followed Rimuru into the room. Rimuru sat beside Shizu, while Leon took a seat opposite them. First things first, Ifrit, you need to understand what Leon expects. Rimuru turned to Shizu, who looked at him confused. He's an idiot who won't open his mouth, so misunderstandings are always happening. Leon, speak clearly and state what you mean when you gave Ifrit to Shizu. Leon, who had remained silent until now, frowned deeply, his eyes narrowing as he spoke. For Ifrit to inhabit Shizu and become my subordinate. Rimuru leaned forward slightly, his brow furrowing. Why did you give Ifrit to Shizu? Leon sighed, his gaze shifting momentarily to Shizu before he answered. Because she has a natural compatibility with flames. You're really talented at this. Rimuru pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling slowly as he calmed himself down. State the real reason why you gave Ifrit to Shizu. It is the true. Then the other reason, Rimuru cut in, his voice sharp with impatience. Leon's gaze remained distant, his expression unreadable as he spoke without hesitation. Because she would have died. Shizu and Ifrit both stared at him, shock flashing across their faces. She was more unstable than the other children, Leon added quietly, his tone flat, though there was a subtle weight to his words, something almost like regret, hidden behind his calm exterior. Leon-sama. Shizu's voice was soft, her confusion and worry clear in her eyes. Rimuru, seeing Shizu's reaction, paused for a moment before nodding, his features softening with understanding. He turned to Leon, his voice quieter now, but still laced with frustration. What do you think of Ifrit's actions earlier? Leon briefly glanced at Ifrit, then shifted his focus back to Shizu, his gaze steady but distant. Ifrit was acting as my bodyguard. His actions were unnecessary. He should bond with Shizu, gain more sentience, and learn the difference between enemies and allies. Ifrit, you should take care of not only me but Shizu as well, Leon said, his tone firm. I gave you to her not to be a vessel, but to be her ally. Rimuru exhaled sharply, rolling his eyes as he leaned back. Finally, he muttered, was it that hard to explain what's on your mind? To be continued.